Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of When Realities Collide. This will be Part 8, Chapter 8. Izuku watches Aizawa Sensei leave, as he, Present Mike, and 1A all leave the classroom on their way down to the training gym. Izuku lingers for a second in the middle of the hallway, as his homeroom teacher's figure gets smaller and smaller before he turns a corner and disappears from sight. There's an impulse, rising in his chest, to sprint after the man that he swallows down. It's the first time they'd really split up since Izuku had managed to convince the underground hero of who he actually is, of his rather unfortunate luck with a quirk in his own reality. He knows he's come to rely on his own Aizawa-sensei. After everything, how could he not? But it doesn't hold a torch to how Izuku had been clinging to this reality's Aizawa-sensei. So much has changed in very subtle ways, but the one thing that hasn't is Aizawa-sensei. Even if the man isn't technically his own from where he's from, Sensei is the only one who doesn't feel different. Plus, he knows that when he's with Sensei, he's safe. Safe from violence, safe from accusations, and safe from quirks. People respect Aizawa-sensei. They're fearful of Aizawa-sensei. All the students at the school, 1A included, have a healthy fear of the stern, tired pro-hero. And even if someone did try something, Sensei has the power to take that danger away with his own quirk, and, well, no one is stupid enough to mess with him when he's trailing along the underground hero's side like a kitten. But now they're separated. He knows he shouldn't feel like he's watching a lifeline disappear. He's safe with Present Mike, and he hopes 1A has been convinced that he's no threat to them, enough that they'll help if something were to happen. And it is a hero school. Students are in classes, so it's not like any of them will randomly show up and try to kill him during class. Still, his stomach clenches with nerves as he turns on his heels and falls into step with Present Mike. He's not expecting the pro's hand to settle on his shoulder, giving a quick pat before draping along his shoulders. But he takes the gentle, grounding touch in stride, stepping closer to the man. Don't worry, listener. Present Mike glances down, shooting him a grin. Shota won't be long, I'm sure. Just a quick chat with Detective Tsukuchi. I know he had some questions for him. Trust me, he doesn't want to leave you any more than you want him to leave you. I'm sure the only reason he even agreed to step away was because he trusts me 110%, you dig? Izuku nods slowly, eyes darting forwards anxiously. 1A had filed out into the changing rooms to put on their athletic uniforms, but since Izuku isn't participating, he keeps by Present Mike's side. It's once again strange to watch his peers, his friends and classmates, leave to do something so routine that he simply isn't a part of. The absence of the class must be why Yamada-sensei is chatting with him so casually, explaining past the brief excuse of meeting a visitor he'd supplied the class with, and not to mention using Aizawa-sensei's given name, which, until arriving in this reality, Izuku hadn't ever heard Present Mike or Aizawa-sensei call one another by anything but their family names or hero names. The trust the pro offers him eases some of the tension in his shoulders, but he's still on edge. He thinks he will be until he's got Aizawa-sensei in his sights. Izuku frowns down towards the ground at that embarrassing level of dependency he has for his homeroom teacher's alternate reality doppelganger. Present Mike doesn't say anything more as they stroll in the direction of the gym the students will be using, Izuku keeping pace with him. He knows it won't be long until the rest of the class is behind them once again. Changing quickly is one of the things you learn fast in Sensei's class, especially when he holds you to high standards. The longer you're changing, the less time you have for class, the less time you have for training. They all want to make the most of what little time they actually have for training, so they're all speedy in the change rooms. Present Mike drops his arm from around Izuku's shoulders as they get closer to the gym, but Izuku doesn't mind. He still keeps pace with the pro. The run-in with Togeda that afternoon, as harmless as it turned out to be, had made him a bit uneasy. It would be so easy to get cornered somewhere by someone with less than pleasant intentions. He's lucky Togeda is such a kind man, maybe even a little lucky that he's a little clueless here. He wonders what would have happened if Togeda had known who he was, or if the one-for-all in this reality reacted to the one-for-all Izuku had brought from his own reality. A sharp pain in his head has him stumbling forwards as he lifts a hand to massage against the side of his head. He draws in a pained breath, bowing his head forwards in an attempt to loosen the strain in his neck as his body tenses up in pain, but it doesn't help at all. It's happening again. That weird headache. It's happening, and Aizawa-sensei isn't here. Figures that would happen. Seems to be just Izuku's luck at this point. Izuku's other hand comes up to massage the other side of his head as well, but the intense pain is only on the one side, It really is a headache like no other he's ever had. Listener? Izuku can't find the strength to look up at the concerned voice. Present Mike's voice is a bit distant, like the man hadn't noticed Izuku stopped walking when he did, but by the time the pro speaks again, he's right at Izuku's side once more. Izuku feels a hand settle on his forearm, giving a light squeeze. He can tell it's Present Mike. You okay? What's wrong? I don't know. Izuku whimpers under his breath. Headache. The pro is quiet for a second, grip still grounding Izuku through the pain. A going back to where you came from sort of headache? No, Izuku whispers, giving a tiny, tense shake of his head. He's surprised by the fact the movement doesn't make anything worse, nor does it lessen anything. It's just a constant, sharp pain. Happened before, yesterday. Went away after a couple seconds. Nothing happened, just hurts. Sensei knows. All right. Present Mike's grip tightens faintly, thumb sweeping gently over his forearm as he repositions so he can grab a hold of Izuku and lead him along. He settles at Izuku's side, his second hand planting on the small of the teen's back as he guides Izuku forwards towards the gym. Come on, then. Let's get you to the gym so you can sit until Shota comes back, yeah? Izuku manages a little nod, without looking up. His eyes are squeezed shut, head still bowed. He's putting all his trust into Yamada-sensei to lead him to the gym the class will be training in. He doesn't want to open his eyes in fear of making the pain worse somehow, but he knows he's overly tense at the lack of his own senses. Doesn't seem like there's any way to win here, though. They're in the gym not much time later. He knows logically it had taken a couple minutes, a lot of steps, but it feels like he's suddenly there. He knows they would have had to walk down the rest of the hall and that Present Mike had to leave him wavering in the hallway as he opened the gym doors for them. It's weird to feel so distant and withdrawn just from a bit of a headache. Well, a very, very painful headache. Izuku feels himself be guided to a wall, redirected right when they enter the room so he got the support of the wall almost instantly. The cool of the wall settles into his body as his shoulder blades make contact with it. He drops his weight almost entirely against the wall and decides that then is a good time for his knees to buckle as he slides down the wall until he's curled into an almost fetal position. He's quick to draw his knees up to his chest, lacing his arms around his knees and squeezing through the pain. He bows his head until he can bury his nose in the gap between his knees, eyes squeezed shut as he attempts to block out the overhead lights in the fabric of his uniform pants. You're okay, he hears a voice tell him. It's so soft, comforting yet a little panicked. Deep breaths, listener. I know it hurts. It'll go away soon, yeah? Just like yesterday. The hand hasn't left his arm, the weight of it anchoring Izuku. He feels the presence at his side, crouched beside him. It doesn't take a genius to know it's Present Mike once again. He manages a shaky breath to appease the voice, head bowing down even more. It hurts. It hurts worse than last time. Sharp and striking against his skull. It feels like someone took a hammer to his skull. He isn't sure why it's in that one specific spot. He doesn't know why the pain is so sharply direct, but still hurts all over, too. It really is the weirdest kind of pain he's ever felt, and he's felt a lot over the years. Sensei? Kaminari's voice filters into Izuku's ears. He still doesn't dare look up, head still pounding. What happened? Is Midori all right? He'll be okay, the English teacher promises, and Izuku can almost imagine the weak smile. It doesn't sound like it really placates anyone as a murmur carries over what he assumes is the majority of Class 1A. Yamada-sensei doesn't move from his spot at Izuku's side as he continues, a bit more upbeat. Don't worry, kiddo. He's just got a bit of a headache. Hopefully it passes soon and we can get back to class, yo. He doesn't look okay, Uraraka observes, and then someone's stepping faintly closer. By how much closer her voice sounds when she continues, he's going to assume it's Uraraka hovering at his other side. Midoriya, are you sure you're okay? Should someone get recovery girl? No, Yamada-sensei declines, and Izuku is glad the man does it. Between the pain and how overwhelmed he feels, his tongue sits heavy in his mouth. Just give him a second, you dig? Why don't you kiddos get a start on some warm-ups, yeah? Give Midoriya some space. Crowding helps no one. 13 taught you that during rescue training, remember? He'll be okay, just give him some room to breathe, yeah? He goes to nod his head in agreement, but doesn't manage to actually get that far. He wants to assure the students he's fine, but he's not so sure of that anymore. It hurts. So much. It's been steadily getting worse, more intense. He wants to cry at the sharp pain, and no amount of wincing or squeezing his eyes shut helps ease it. Still, He manages to bite back his tears, overwhelmingly aware of how close and attentive the majority of the class already is. It almost feels like he's back where he belongs. His peers worried about him because they're friends and classmates, and he's a hero student and not a villain. He's not, though. He knows that. He doesn't want to cry in front of 1A. They're already worried. Him bawling because of a headache will just worry them more, which is something he does not want. They should be focusing on their training, not on him. Kiddo, President Mike speaks again, this time a little more urgent. Don't pull your hair like that. You'll hurt yourself. And you shouldn't be grabbing like that with your injury. Come on, loosen your grip a bit. I know it hurts, kiddo. The pressure of his hand on Izuku's arm tightens lightly, but it still doesn't hurt or even feel uncomfortable in the slightest. It's so close to being a distraction from the pain in his head. He feels it, but it's no longer grounding him. Izuku hadn't even noticed he'd lifted his hands to nod into his curls. He can't feel anything besides the throb of pain in his skull. He wants to just flop over on his side and bury his head between his knees. He wants Sensei, or his mom. He wants something familiar. It must really hurt. He hears Todoroki next, as a shadow looms over the figure he'd already identified as Uraraka. Midoriya hardly even flinched when I did that to his hand. Oh yeah, that's right, Kirishima replies, and Izuku can hear the frown in his tone. We didn't even realize he was hurt until Sensei pointed it out. Midoriya's pain tolerance is like through the roof. It was so manly he barely batted an eyelash. That headache must be killer if it's doing this to him. Is there anything we can do to help? Ashido asked distantly, further away from the others. Maybe she's actually warming up like Yamada-sensei suggested. He doubts it. He can almost feel the presence of the 1A students crowding around him despite Yamada-sensei's attempts at shooing them away. The headache will pass, President Mike tells the students calmly. It's not the first time that it's happened. I'd just like for him to loosen his grip a bit. He could hurt himself if he doesn't stop. Midoriya, do you think you can do that, just a bit? He wants to, but he doesn't even remember lifting his hands to his hair. All he can focus on is the pain. His fingers are tense, and he doesn't think he can even really feel them through the pain in his head. He digs his fingertips into his skull above the site of the pain, wincing to himself when it does nothing to help. When it doesn't help at all, he knots his fingers deeper into the curls, face pinching in pain. He thinks he might let out a cry of discomfort or something, since President Mike's hand squeezes comfortingly and he hears worried whispers from the students. He thinks he might tighten his grip unknowingly, and he feels gentle fingers trying to slip between where he's clutching at clumps of his own curls. Maybe I can help. The voice is familiar, but not one Izuku can place. It's not one he hears every day, and he can't seem to match the voice to a face or even a name. There are mumbles of agreement around him, but he doesn't bother putting in the effort to decipher anything. The thought of thinking makes him feel queasy as another strike of pain shoots through his head. He thinks he hears Yamada-sensei's voice somewhere nearby, but he's not really sure at this point. Midoriya, can you talk right now? He tenses at being addressed, turning the question over in his head a couple of times as he tries to figure out an answer. His fingers twitch as he tries to force his heavy tongue into action. It's easier to find his voice than it is to take control of his own fingers. Yes, and his body goes numb. Ah, Shinso. Good. Izuku hears the voice mumble with a nervous laugh. That would have been so much harder if you couldn't. Anyways, release your grip on your hair, Midoriya. Hands at your sides. Good. Good, now take a breath. Nice and deep. I bet it hurts, but you need to take a breath. His body follows suit, complying with Shinso's demands without a care or thought. His body sucks in a desperate breath, and Izuku feels the relief settle in his lungs. He's never had an attack like that before, but he's also never had such an incapacitating pain in his head either. He's never felt pain like this, and never in a place as vital as his head. He's used to broken arms and legs and the occasional concussion, but this is worse than all that combined. Some of the pain in his head lessens. Had he been tugging that much, he hadn't realized. The worried tone of Yamada-sensei makes more sense now. He can play some of the pain now, and now that he's no longer tugging at his own hair, he finds a bit of relief. But that sharp, insistent pain doesn't waver. He doesn't quite know what happens. 1 second, he's blearily staring at Shinso, feeling worlds away and distant, even though he knows it's just the effect of the brainwashing quirk he's under. Then the next second, he's actually gone, and he's alone wherever he is. Izuku fights tiredly against the restraints, glancing down. His body is enveloped in a dark, pixelated sort of. He doesn't even know what to compare it to. The edges of the restraint flickers off into dark green, and it's familiar, in a way. It keeps him rooted in place, body tense with that numb pins and needles sort of feeling you get when your limbs fall asleep. His head still pounds, sharp against his skull. But it has lessened a bit with the sudden change of environment. The darkness climbs slowly up his body, crawling along his chest and getting closer to his face. It covers over his mouth, but he can't taste anything weird, or really feel anything. He knows it's there, can see it when he looks down, but it's like there's nothing there at all. He wonders what this is, what sort of quirk it is. "Don't fight it. You've been here before," a voice reprimands lightly. "You're safe. For now." Izuku looks down at the green and black void before lifting his eyes in the direction of the voice. The man he sees is surrounded in a similar void-like substance, except instead of green, the wispy ends are purplish, and it's not restricting him in the way it is Izuku. The void is almost a part of this man, clinging to his form. The man himself has white hair and deep scars dragging down his face. He's not close enough for Izuku to tell any more of his details. Once again, there's a faint déjà vu sort of feeling. It's all so familiar. He takes a second to stare at the man before it all clicks into place. He's not sure why he didn't realize sooner. He's in the quirk. In one for all once again, so this must be another vestige. He faintly remembers seeing the man that first time he'd been caught up in the quirk. "It hurts," Izuku whispers, surprised when he can hear himself despite his mouth being lost in the void. "What's happening? Why is it happening?" "It's manifesting," the vestige informs calmly, eyes narrowed on the teenager. "It's not the first time you've felt it before. It's just stronger now, more pronounced. It hurts, but it's useful. You can train it. You can lessen the pain with practice." "I can train what?" Izuku questions. "Please, what is happening to me?" "A threat is coming," the vestige offers bluntly. "What you're feeling is my quirk. It's warning you now, so you're not blindsided. Please don't brush it off. Danger sense will help you. Any advantage as a hero is a good advantage, so take the warning and prepare yourself." "Wait, but what's coming?" Izuku begs. "Please, you've got to know. Is it the League? Another attack on the school? Is it Deku? The one from this reality? The me from here? Please, you've got to let me know so I can help." The vestige is quiet for a second, thoughtful as he studies Izuku. "It doesn't work like that," he finally tells the teenager. There's a subtle sigh to the tone, almost mournful. "I'm sorry. Danger sense isn't a glimpse into the future. It's a warning to be prepared for what's to come. Only time will tell what the danger is. It will help you if you let it. My quirk is nothing but a warning. It can't offer you specifics." Izuku draws in a breath as the dark, void-like blinding climbs up past his nose, inching towards his eyes. It feels like a means to the end. Like, when he's completely consumed, he'll be gone. "What do I do?" Izuku asks desperately, just as the quirk lifts higher. "Please, you must know. What can I do?" "You don't take it for granted." The vestige bows his head. "You work hard and get stronger. Danger sense is just the first of many to come. Please keep getting stronger. Keep working hard. Danger sense will help you in your fight. A sixth sense will give you an advantage if you learn to use it." Izuku wants to say something about not knowing how to use it. He's so far out of his depth, and there's apparently some sort of danger swiftly making its way towards them. The thought has another sharp strike of pain blurring his vision. Of course the quirk would choose to manifest a new random quirk when Izuku is as isolated from help as he thinks he could ever be. He doesn't even have All Might to bounce ideas off, and to look to for guidance. "Trust danger sense," the vestige offers finally. "No matter what you're facing, malicious intent comes in all forms. Don't forget that." He doesn't get a chance to reply, as he's completely consumed. It feels like he's dropped back right into the real world as he's snapped from brainwash with a hearty shake of his shoulder. Izuku chokes on a sharp inhale as his vision clears, and he's met with the Yamada-sensei's worried expression and a crowd of wide-eyed 1A students gathered around him. "Midoriya," Shinso breathes out, shoulder slumping in relief. "What happened? I dropped my quirk once you calmed down a bit, but you were still under the effects. What the hell was that? Never had anyone react like that. How is that even possible?" "Sorry," Izuku whispers out as he works to orient himself. Everything had happened so fast. He takes a second to try to push down the pain in his head. There are apparently more important things to be worried about than a headache, before turning to scan over everyone. He does a silent head count and is pleased to find that everyone appears to be okay. If everyone is all right now, though, that just means danger is on its way. The sharp pain still hasn't let up, but Izuku takes the warning for what it is now. Danger is coming. The doors to the gym slam open with enough force that the walls crack where the doors had flown back into them. "I am here," All Might's voice booms, and Izuku is surprised to see All Might in his one-for-all form. "Worry not, students. I am here to neutralize the threat." Izuku hears the murmurs from the students, questions of the danger, and curiosity of the fact that All Might is here when he's not supposed to be. He hears Yamada-san trying to quiet them, and maybe even hears the man question All Might, but the sounds around him are nothing but white noise as he focuses on All Might. Relief settles in Izuku's stomach as another sharp pain shoots through his skull. The feelings contradict each other, but the relief he feels at seeing Yagi-san, the #1 hero here to help, outweighs the desperate ache of danger sense. All Might is here. He'll help. He always helps. The teen pushes himself to his feet quickly, stepping towards All Might hurriedly. "All Might!" "You!" comes a dark snarl as All Might whips around to face Izuku as soon as the teen emerges from the crowd. The pain in his head digs deeper, and it hits Izuku like a bus that the danger has arrived. "Vile villain, just what do you think you are doing targeting these students?" Trust danger sense no matter what you're facing. Malicious intent comes in all forms. Don't forget that. Izuku's breath catches in his throat as All Might suddenly barrels at him, fast and strong and moving within a blink of an eye. Izuku is frozen in fear as the bulking hero charges him, grabbing fistfuls of Izuku's uniform as soon as he's within reach and continuing forth until Izuku's back slams into the wall. He hears the drywall crack, and shards of crumbled wall dig uncomfortably into his spine and shoulders as he tries to process the situation. Tries to process All Might restraining him with such ferocity. Pain creeps up his back, spine tingling at the pressure as he's shoved back even further, forcing a hole into the wall with nothing but his body and All Might's force. This isn't right. This isn't All Might. Izuku blinks owlishly, breath caught as he stares up with wide eyes at All Might's wrathful expression. This is not his All Might. This is not his beloved Yagi-san, the man who's given him a chance at a normal life, who'd offered the chance to be a hero. This is not All Might, not his All Might. How could he have forgotten such an important fact? How could he let this slip his mind? He himself might have momentarily forgotten how dangerous this man can be, but the quirk, danger sense, hadn't. All Might. The threat was All Might all along. One for All was warning him of All Might finding him. Oh God, All Might was going to kill him. All Might had slammed him into a wall. He might die here. "Yagi!" Izuku hears Present Mike's voice snap, but he can't draw his eyes away from All Might's angry, narrowed eyes. The voice here was loud, but probably not using his quirk, considering his ears weren't ringing or anything. But it was definitely loud. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Get your hands off! He's a temporary student!" All Might doesn't waver in the slightest, fists curled into Izuku's shirt and holding him against the concrete wall of the training gym. Izuku's never felt more trapped, more scared. This is All Might, his hero. Big and bulking, and an image Izuku was sure he'd never see again after All Might fought for All for One that last time. This was the man who'd given Izuku a chance in the world. This is All Might. But it's not. Izuku's heart thumps heavily in his chest. It's beating so fast, so hard, he thinks he might be having a heart attack, or the worst adrenaline he's ever had in his life. He's scared, and he hurts, and he doesn't even think he could get his body to cooperate if he tried. He doesn't even know how he could escape this, escape the #1 hero. There's just something about being pinned by his idol. All Might, the man he's always looked up to, tense and seething, looking at Izuku like he's the scum of the universe. That is his heart shattering in his chest. This isn't right. "I won't do that. This is a villain, Yamada," All Might snarls, hands tightening in the fabric of Izuku's uniform. "He infiltrated our school. He's been playing you, tricking you. This is the villain Deku. He must be stopped." His back hurts, and his head hurts, and All Might had shoved him into the wall. All Might shoved him into a wall, like he's some villain, like he's Deku. His hero had turned on him. His mentor looked seconds away from ending him. Izuku's not sure he'll ever forget the dark look in All Might's eyes. The dark look narrowed in on him. For a long second, Izuku doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want to fight All Might, even if no one else around here knows about One for All and the time limit he does. He wonders how long Togeda had the quirk, if All Might can still use it around the time limit. Had the fight against All for One gone differently here? When had this All Might given Togeda the quirk? Still, he's staring One for All in the face. Yagi-san knows the quirk. Yagi-san has had it for many years, had mastered the strength. Izuku's just getting started. He's no match for All Might. He's not sure he'll ever be a match for All Might. He can't just do nothing, though. Izuku lifts his own hands to All Might's wrists, clamping around them. He can't get any leverage, not lifted so far up off the ground. He can't even wriggle his way out of the iron-tight grip the pro has on him. All Might is strong. He's dangerous. Izuku activates One for All, barely managing to reposition his hands, lifting them up just enough so he can flick both his fingers simultaneously against the pro's wrists. He hopes it doesn't do too much damage to the retired pro, but he's too scatterbrained and panicked right now to even gauge his own power level. He leaves that to the vestiges. Right now, all he needs to focus on is keeping out of All Might's range and not being caught. All Might's grip at the attack falters just enough to give Izuku a chance to break the contact. Without a thought, he brings his feet up and uses One for All to kick both into All Might's chest. At the impact, the man is forced back, grip on Izuku forced away as he stumbles back. He doesn't linger even as the panicked haze blurs his vision, adrenaline now curving his thoughts into flight. He knows he can't fight All Might. He mentally doesn't think he ever could, not even an alternate reality All Might who wants to kill him. He owes All Might so much. This man is still his hero. He's still the only person to look at quirkless Izuku and decide he's worth something. He's still the one who decided Izuku could be a hero and helped him get there. He doesn't want to fight All Might. All Might had been forced nearly halfway across the gym by the force of One for All, looking momentarily confused by the power. The confusion is gone just as fast as it appeared, and All Might is rushing back for Izuku once again. He's prepared this time, leaping out of the way at the last second. He uses the wall as leverage, launching himself halfway across the room. He sees 1A out of the corner of his eye, all looking as shell-shocked as Izuku feels. Present Mike looks livid, body tense like he's trying to formulate some sort of plan. His quirk isn't suited for such a close fight. One wrong move and he'll hit a student, or Izuku himself. His hands are, more or less, tied. All Might swirls around to face Izuku again, almost like he'd expected the quick movement to come. Izuku's afraid of how quickly the pro had figured him out. The hero's launching right after him. Izuku feels his body tense as he launches into another leap away, just as his feet hit the ground. All Might's eyes narrow in annoyance, but he doesn't hesitate to launch right after him. He's not as fast as Izuku, which is a blessing. All Might is big and strong. His body is dense with muscle mass. When he's in his one-for-all state, he's fast. No question about that. But the bulk of him limits his speed in a way that it doesn't with Izuku. Izuku is small and agile. He'd taken the time to learn how to use One for All to his advantage with his size. It hadn't come naturally like it had with All Might and probably Togeda, but Izuku had made it his own. He'd absorbed every lesson taught to him by All Might, Aizawa-sensei, Gran Torino, and even the vestiges. Still, even with the speed advantage, every move Izuku makes, All Might is on his heels. He didn't become the #1 pro for nothing. He's smart, and fast too. Even if he can't quite keep pace with Izuku's frantic jumps, he's still only one step behind him. If he makes one wrong move, or lingers for even a second too long, he's screwed. All Might had played this cat-and-mouse game for years with villains, for longer than Izuku had even been alive. It won't be long until the pro is predicting Izuku before he even knows what he's doing himself. How long can Izuku keep this up? How long can All Might keep this up? Izuku pounces to the side, as a punch that had been heading right for his midsection connects to the wall just behind him with a rumble of cracking drywall. Izuku forces his attention away from the debris, willing his body to follow suit and get away. Izuku really doesn't stand a chance, he's starting to realize. His heart pounds in his chest, head fuzzy with nothing more than the repeated thought of, get away, get away. He's never been so high on adrenaline, and he's honestly never been more scared. All Might is still one step behind him, attention narrowed on Izuku and growing angrier by the second. Izuku can see the man snapping as he's jerked along in an attempt to catch Izuku. "You're only making this worse for yourself, Deku," the hero sneers after what feels like far too long. It can't have been more than a few minutes or so of their chase, but Izuku feels like he's choking on his own lungs. The man throws his whole body into a punch that Izuku narrowly misses as he speaks. "Surrender! Do not put these students' lives at risk, villain! Surely even you aren't that vile!" He can't manage any words, despite the frantic apology that sits on the tip of his tongue. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to convince the man he's no threat. He's not sure what he could possibly say to get All Might to at least hesitate. Honestly, he doesn't even know how to make his mouth form words in this moment. His dry mouth won't move, no matter how hard he tries. His heart beats so loud it rings in his own ears. He hears Present Mike still, shouting at All Might, but the retired pro is ignoring him. All Might is entirely focused on Izuku. Laser-focused. Izuku wants to cry. The teen knew his frantic state was going to catch up to him. He knew it would happen sooner or later. As soon as he'd flung himself into that first one-for-all powered leap, it had been a frantic attempt, sheer adrenaline that he'd been running off since. He'd hardly even had a second to digest waking up from Shinso's quirk and process the fact he'd manifested a second quirk. He knows his inability to think clearly with his idol attacking him would make him slip up at some point. He's never even had to defend like this, not himself. He's never been so afraid in school, and he'd gone to school with Kachan at a public junior high school. He doesn't even know how he trips, what he trips over. It could have been his shoes or laces or something on the ground or even his own feet. He doesn't know. All he knows is 1 second he's darting away from the pro using one for all, and the next, he's losing his footing and hitting the ground hard. His knees hit the ground, and there's a sharp stinging in his bandaged hand as he finds himself on his hands and knees. There's shouting going on around him, but all he can hear is the sound of his own heart racing in his ears as a threatening shadow looms closer and closer to his hunched-over form. He can't get up fast enough. He knows he can't, not with how fast All Might is approaching. He can't force himself up, but he also knows he can't not see what's coming. In the position he's in now, he can't see the pro, can't see what's coming. He knows All Might is getting closer by the second, but the thought of not knowing how close the man is, how close the danger truly is, when Izuku will be caught, settles in Izuku's stomach like a rock. Izuku can only turn, flopping frantically to get eyes on the #1 pro hero. He lands ungracefully on his butt, pushing himself back desperately by digging his heels into the ground and propelling himself back. He hardly moves, even with one for all. All Might is seconds away from grabbing him a second time, eyes alit with anger. Before now, Izuku had only seen lit in the man's eyes when facing a villain. Izuku can just stare wide-eyed as defeat and fear bind around his heart. Things feel like they move in slow motion as All Might gets closer, now just about within arm's reach. Izuku is bathed in the bulking man's shadow. Izuku rears back with a flinch, bowing his head and lifting his arms to protect his face as one last act of defense, as he prepares for an impact of All Might grabbing him with a bruising grip and... But it doesn't come. A hissed string of curse words do, though. Izuku peeks out between the gap between his arms, after a long second of no impact, drawing in a shaky breath at the wall of ice that's suddenly just there, no more than half an inch away from his face. It's so cold that his breath mists up in condensation when he forces in a couple shaky breaths. What? Young Todoroki, Izuku hears All Might shout, sounding appalled. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Who you're protecting right now? That's my friend, Todoroki tells the hero darkly. You aren't going to hurt him. I won't let you. That boy is a villain, All Might roars, and then the ice is shattering. He is to be arrested for the greater good, young man. Izuku hears the cracking before shards of shattered ice rain over him. He's pushing himself up as ice crystals cling to his clothes and hair. He hears heavy footsteps, the ice crunching under someone getting very close very fast. He braces once again for impact. He's not. That's Sero's voice. He's our friend. Izuku winces again, looking up through slivered eyes as All Might stumbles. He's a bit closer than he had been, so there's no doubt that All Might had been the one charging through the shards of ice. It takes a second to realize why he stumbled. Sero's tape is wrapped around All Might's ankles, knotted together and keeping him in place. It's like the teen had tied his shoelaces together and... Is that a capture weapon? Coiled around his hand and wrist. All Might had been aiming another punch, but now his hand is caught, where he'd reared his arm back for force. You're being an asshole, All Might, Shinso grits out between his teeth, straining against keeping All Might's wrist drawn back. Midoriya hasn't done anything wrong. You literally have no reason to attack him. The three of you are going to be in big trouble, All Might growls, fighting against both the tape and the capture weapon simultaneously. That's not a new student, young heroes. He's a villain. That's Deku. Surely you must know the name. He forced me into retirement. He helped attack the school. He helped the League try to kill Aizawa, 13, and all you students. There's a villain in your school, in your class. No, he didn't. He didn't do any of that, Kaminari defends fiercely. Midoriya's from another reality. He's a hero student too. Sensei vouched for him. Midoriya proved it. You're wrong, All Might. He's been helping us since we met him. Ashido agrees loudly, voice sharp. Izuku isn't sure he's ever heard that tone from Ashido. She's usually so upbeat, so he's a bit startled to hear the genuine anger. If he really was Deku, he would have done something by now. It's been days, and all he's done is help us with our quirks and fighting. If that's what he's been saying, then you've been fooled, students. That's absurd. This villain is not to be trusted, All Might snarls out, like he's not even hearing the students past his own rage or fear, finally using enough of his strength to tug his wrist free of Shinso's capture weapon. The quirk-enhanced tug has Shinso toppling to the floor. When his arms are free, he reaches down to tear Sero's tape off his ankles effortlessly, tossing it carelessly to the side as he scans the students before settling once again on Izuku. Stand down, students, his voice booms when he continues. He's lying to you, young heroes. You're all being naive. I don't know who you think this boy is, but he's not your friend. He's using you, tricking you. That's what villains do. He is not, Uraraka yells back, eyes narrowed angrily. She's at Izuku's side now, helping him to his feet. He wobbles, knees unsteady, as his adrenaline wavers. She's careful of his burned hand, and even gentle when she settles a hand on his lower back to help keep him balanced. He really appreciates the help, considering he's starting to feel like he'd been slammed into a wall now. When he's finally steady on his feet, Uraraka whips her angry attention back to the number one hero. You don't know anything about Midoriya, All Might. The pro hasn't made an attempt at coming any closer, even though he's freed from his restraints. Totally unmanly, All Might, Kirishima growls out angrily in agreement, also settling at Izuku's side. Well, he's a bit ahead of Izuku, and almost blocking him from view. By Kirishima's tense stance, he's waiting for All Might to make a move, so he can shield Izuku and Uraraka with hardening. Izuku's oddly touched at the fact. Midoriya hasn't done anything wrong. You attacked unprovoked. My job as a hero is to keep students like you safe from the likes of him. Deku being within the walls of UA justifies my actions to protect. All Might snarls out in annoyance, gaze flicking around to all the students. They're stood defiantly, some around Izuku while others have put themselves between the pro and the teen. I am your teacher and a pro hero. Deku is a villain. You're aiding a villain. You're protecting a villain. This is unbecoming of future heroes attending this school. Now move aside and let me... Yagi, Yamada-sensei calls the man's attention in. His tone is dark and serious. Izuku's never heard such a tone from the light and cheerful pro-hero radio host. Not in all the years he'd been listening to Put Your Hands Up radio, and watching Present Mike fight clips on the internet. I am also their teacher, and if you want to pursue this, to punish them for being heroes and protecting their friend against a threat, I'm going to push right back. Remember, All Might, only one of us has a license to teach, and I suggest you not forget that. You may have been the number one hero, but these are my kids, you dig? Present Mike is so cool. Izuku hears someone whisper under their breath. He thinks it's Jiro. He agrees wholeheartedly. Izuku watches with squinted eyes as Yamada-sensei paces angrily towards the center of the gym, arms laced over his chest and jaw set in anger. He could use his quirk now, if he needed to. The students are all crowded behind him, and it's just All Might before him. The two adults glare at one another, but neither backs down. I don't know what Deku said to you, what lies he told you, or whatever he did to convince you of his supposed innocence, Yamada, but he won't do the same to me. I won't be so easily fooled. That's a villain. That boy is a villain. He works for the League. That miscreant needs to be arrested. Who knows what he's up to, what he's using this school, the students for. He's not using them for anything, Present Mike snaps back, looking more ticked off by the second. He's a hero course student from another reality who had the misfortune of ending up here. He's proven that multiple times. If you'd had the common sense to ask before attacking him in a secured school, I'm sure he wouldn't have minded showing you the proof. I'm not going to ask a villain for proof that he's not a villain. All Might looks completely appalled at the idea. I'm going to detain and arrest the person I suspect is here to cause harm. I'm protecting these students from Deku. You've seen what he's capable of. Suspicion isn't permission to attack a teenager, Present Mike snarls. Fight first, ask questions later might work for you outside these walls, but here in this school, a school, Yagi, where there are students who you carelessly put in harm's way, that is not how we roll. Any one of these students could have gotten hurt in your pursuit of Midoriya. Midoriya, an innocent bystander in this reality, could have been hurt, and that would have been on you. Do you even hear yourself? All Might growls out, eyes narrowed once again on Izuku. You're defending a villain, Yamada. You're putting these students at risk by protecting him. You know what he's done. You're putting the students at risk, the blonde snaps back, tense shoulders squaring up. I'm defending an innocent kid, who was minding his own business in class until you showed up. Forget for a second that this kid looks like Deku, since he showed up at the school days ago. Name one thing he's done wrong that could warrant an attack. All Might paused, eyes hardening as he glares at Izuku. He's a villain. What the hell is going on here? Izuku's body physically deflates at the sound of Aizawa-sensei's voice. He feels Uraraka's hand settle more firmly on his arm and back as she helps keep him up. As Izuku wilts in relief, as everyone, All Might and Prison Mike included, freeze in place at the sharp snap in the underground hero's tone, Izuku hears the anger in Aizawa-sensei's voice, but he can just be glad that help is here. There aren't a lot of people who stand a chance against All Might, but Eraserhead is one of them. Should Aizawa-sensei use his quirk on All Might, One for All will be wiped away just like when he uses his quirk on Izuku. As is, very few people stand a match for the retired pro, even retired, but Eraserhead is probably top of that list. Aizawa-kun, All Might's voice booms, attention crawling from Prison Mike to the angry, dark-haired man, stood fuming in the doors that had banged open with his arrival. The student you've been looking after is not who you think. Now, I need you to talk some sense into your students and Yamada-kun. No, Yagi. Back the hell away from my students. Aizawa-sensei's tone is deathly calm as he storms into the gym to join Present Mike as another barrier between the pro and the students. I'm not messing around, Yagi. Those are my students, and I've deemed you as a threat to their safety. Do not give me a reason to restrain you. All Might frowns at the very real threat, eyeing Aizawa-sensei before lifting his hands in surrender, as he goes to take a step towards the two teachers. Now wait a moment, Aizawa-kun. Back up. You take one more step and I won't show you the same nicety Mike did. Aizawa-sensei snarls, hands nodding into his capture weapon and his hair lifting as he threatens his quirk. All Might pauses once again, hesitating as he studies Aizawa. You have some nerve, Yagi, the dark-haired man hisses. You come into my class, force yourself in around my students, despite their hesitance, and then you attack my personal student. You force my heroics class into a position they should never have been in the first place, and you threatened an innocent minor under the school's protection. Unacceptable. Aizawa. Shut up, Sensei snaps, marching up to the number one hero without an ounce of hesitation. The underground pro sneers at the bulking man, jabbing a finger into his chest. You have no right to assault a temporary student. That's just common sense, Yagi. I don't care who the hell you think that kid is, or who the hell you are for that matter. You have no right. You could be the Emperor of Japan for all I care. Mess with those brats back there, and you're dealing with me. Really, Aizawa, surely you must be aware of who that is, All Might snaps. He's a villain. That boy is a heroic student. Aizawa-sensei jerks a thumb over his shoulder in a broad gesture to Izuku's general direction, as he sharply cuts the hero off. He's a heroic student at this school, in my class. He's from another reality and has proven that. He's my student, and if I find out you hurt so much as a hair on his head, I'll make you wish you'd never decided to teach at this school. You're threatening me? All Might's brow furrows in offense. Over him? We've been co-workers for months. You just met that delinquent. I actually like him, Aizawa-sensei sneers. Can't say the same about an overzealous hothead who chooses to assault a minor over asking literally anyone to verify his identification. Listen now and listen well, Yagi. That boy is going to be a hero. He is not the villain Deku. He is my student, and as such, he is under my protection just as any of my other students are. He is a student at this school. He's your student too, just another child you've taken a shady liking to. What? All Might blinks owlishly, glancing at Izuku for just a second, before looking back at the dark-haired man in front of him. Aizawa, what do you... You heard me. Sensei hisses, jamming his finger into the man's chest before pulling back and crossing his arms over his chest. I don't know what the hell you're up to, Yagi, but I don't like it. First Togata, and now I come to find out it's Midori instead where he's from. I knew you were a secretive idiot, but if you've got something going on... Aizawa, comes the slightly out of breath but stern voice of the detective from the doorway. Enough. You've got an audience, remember. Think about who this might affect as well before you continue. Don't do anything brash. You're better than this, Aizawa. Izuku sees Sensei's eyes dart quickly to the doorway, where the detective is standing, gaze then flicking to where the detective had been subtly directing his own attention. Izuku isn't surprised when he makes eye contact with Aizawa-sensei, but he is surprised by how the man's shoulders wilt slightly, losing some of the anger and fight, like Izuku has some sort of weakness to the man. The underground hero's body is still tense and unmoving despite his narrowed eyes, flicking back to Detective Tsukuchi after taking a long second to study Izuku. He does seem to take the man's warning, mouth snapping shut as his eyes drift back to All Might. You're lucky I'm a better man than you are, Yagi. I'm on to you. Aizawa-sensei finally steps back, hard gaze still on the retired hero, even as he buries his hands in the pockets of his costume. Izuku sees the tension in the man's feigned indifference, body ready to snap into action should need be. Izuku's never felt safer. Tsukuchi. All Might finally turns his head, tone grave and expression a grimace. What Aizawa-san's saying, that boy, is he... I think we should discuss this elsewhere. Tsukuchi interrupts, face twisted in a scowl. Izuku thinks All might see some sort of answer in the detective's gaze, despite there being nothing in his words, since the retired pro sucks in a sharp breath after studying the detective, eyes darting back quickly to Izuku before returning to the detective. Detective Tsukuchi is quiet for a second, seeming to decide how he wants to go about the situation as law enforcement. You went too far, and I can't ignore that. All I'll say now is that boy, the one you're looking at right now, is not the Midori Izuku responsible for anything Deku has done. We will be talking, Yagi. Now, you've caused enough problems in this class today. Indeed he has. Izuku jerks his attention to just behind Tsukuchi. The man in question jumps, startled, but the principal just smiles sharply up at him as he steps around the detective. The principal takes a second to survey over the class, his teachers, and the detective before his beady eyes narrow in on a sheepish and distraught-looking All Might. The students all look surprised, but Aizawa-sensei and Yamada-sensei don't really. Oh my, Yagi-san, Nezu tuts, strolling into the room. You certainly caused quite the ruckus. I am quite unsettled by the display you've put on. You might be the retired #1 hero, but under this roof you're simply one of my teachers. I don't think I need to tell you that your actions today were not those of a teacher I want guiding the next generation of heroes. A reprimand is in your future for how you've behaved, as well as for attempting to assault a student I authorized. Nezu-san. Not a word, Yagi-san. Nezu shakes his head. I see we may have made a slight miscalculation on our end. That said, that's no excuse for your actions, Yagi-san. I'm deeply disappointed. I think we're overdue for a chat, so Yagi, detective, if you both could be so kind as to accompany me to my office. Hang on. Sensei turns fully to the principal. There is no way. You three are sharing secrets again. I don't know what the hell is happening, but if you think I'm going to look the other direction any longer, you're sorely mistaken. That man put my students at risk, and I want to know why. And you will. Nezu-sensei nods in agreement, eyes flicking up to Aizawa-sensei. I agree, Aizawa-kun. Today should never have happened, and we all made mistakes that put our young student at risk. You will get your answers, I'm sure, but we must discuss first, and you are not privy to that quite yet. Aizawa-sensei's eyes narrow in on the principal, but Nezu-sensei continues before the man can. Besides, right now I think you have more pressing matters to attend to. At that, Sensei is turning to look at Izuku. The man's expression softens, and Izuku distantly wonders how awful he must look hanging off of Uraraka and surrounded by 1A students that would warrant the teacher's entire aura to soften. For a long second, the homeroom teacher just looks around at his students before finally blowing out an almost defeated breath. Fine, the underground hero huffs without looking away from Izuku. Just get him out of here. This ordeal has taken up enough of my students' afternoon. Of course. Nezu bows his head lightly. Let's get the students back on schedule, and if you still want to chat later, you and Midoriya-kun should make your way to my office after school. We should be finished by then, and we can all have a nice chat over tea. Yeah, all right. Sensei sighs, glancing back at Izuku. If Midoriya wants to, at least. It is his decision if he wants to be in the same room as Yagi after everything. Izuku opens his mouth to assure he very much wants to, but shuts his mouth just as fast when he realizes his tongue is tied and no words are coming out. His heart hammers in his chest still, only now starting to settle. He looks away sharply instead of trying to speak again. Yes, of course. Nezu agrees once again, his own eyes flicking over to Izuku as his whiskers arch forward in interest. I trust you'll redirect your class and tend to our guest, yes? As for us, Detective, Yagi, shall we? We have a lot to discuss. Izuku watches out of the corner of his eye as Yagi-san hurries to join Nezu, who'd turned on his heels and marched towards the door, where the detective is still standing. The three of them file out of the room silently. For a second, nothing moves in the gym, and then... All right, 1A. Sensei calls attention. At ease. I know that was a lot to handle. You all did well in protecting my personal student and keeping your wits about you whilst doing so. I understand it was hard having someone you admire being the cause of the problem, but you handled it well. Rest assured that All Might will get penalized for what he did today. He just went Great for Midoriya, Jiro tells the man, voice breathy. I've never seen All Might so mad. He didn't even really say anything, Yaoyorozu adds quietly. Just rushed Midoriya as soon as he saw him. It was terrifying. I can't imagine being the one he was after. Izuku shudders at that thought. Not saying anything, Uraraka shoots him a sympathetic frown as she shifts just enough so she's almost hugging him. He appreciates the kind gesture. All Might reacted with his heart instead of his head. Sensei tells the class calmly, drawing Izuku's attention back. It was unprofessional and unethical, but it was a very human reaction. His intent was to protect you students from what he thought was a threat. No one says anything, but Izuku can see them all processing the man's words. Sensei turns back to them, scanning the group before continuing as he makes his way towards Izuku. Let this be a lesson to you all. When you let yourself get overwhelmed in the field or while doing hero work, you start making irrational decisions that can and will hurt people. All Might jumped the gun on this and didn't bother verifying anything before rushing in. That is not how a hero should act, and it doesn't follow protocol. Learn from someone else's mistakes, and try to keep a level head. All Might definitely didn't have a level head. Kaminari's nose scrunches up. He doesn't even know Midoriya, hardly even said a word to him. And he was so rough instantly, Uraraka adds. Isn't Deku quirkless? Midoriya held his own, but All Might really could have hurt someone without a quirk. He didn't even seem to care. He could have, Yamada-sensei sighs. He was under the impression that Midoriya was Deku, but that was still an overpowered attack aimed for someone registered as quirkless. He definitely could have really hurt him, Midoriya and Deku both. It was just so unmanly of All Might, Kirishima huffs. Are you okay, Mito bro? Yeah, Izuku finally croaks out, wincing at the strain in his own voice. Just a bit sore, I'm fine. As expected, Ida crosses his arms over his chest. All Might used excessive force on you. I only left to get Sensei after he'd already slammed you into the wall. We were worried he could have really hurt you. He was really rough. Ashido nods in agreement, looking slightly spooked still. I think anyone could tell that much by the Midoriya-shaped hole in the wall. Izuku refuses to look over at the hole he knows is there. His back aches at the reminder, but he just stares down at his own shoes. His bandaged hand throbs, and his spine tingles in that unpleasant way, but at least Danger Sense had calmed down. There is nothing more than a slight pulse of pain that Izuku assumes is from being slammed into the wall. All right. Sensei finally draws attention back. Izuku slowly drags his attention to the man, finding Sensei at present Mike's side. They'd obviously been talking. I know that was a whole ordeal, but you all still need to work on training. I'm going to leave you in Mike's capable hands this afternoon. You all know what you're supposed to be working on. There is a chorus of yes, Sensei from all the students. Izuku's still a little out of it as he tries to come down from the adrenaline slowly fading. He startles when a hand lands on his shoulder, but relaxes completely when he whips his gaze around to find Sensei. Do you need to go to recovery, girl? Izuku hesitates, looking around himself to gauge how much he can really say without worrying the students, but is surprised to realize the rest of the students have already spread out to work on training. He hadn't even noticed Uraraka leaving his side. No, Izuku finally forces out. I'm okay, just stiff, I guess. I'm more so just trying to wrap my head around this. Around that, All Might attacking like that. Let me look at your hand, Sensei asks softly, already holding his hand out for Izuku to set his own into. Izuku blinks in confusion at the odd request, and Sensei snorts a huff of laughter when he notices. Mike said you landed pretty hard on it. I just want to make sure you didn't tear the wound open or anything. Izuku can't argue with that, so he offers the bandaged hand for his teacher to inspect. There is no trace of any blood, and as much as it hurts after he'd fallen on it, he can tell it's just impact irritation. His whole body is basically impact irritation at this point. Izuku doesn't even realize he's spacing out until... What do you need, Midoriya? Huh? Right now, the man continues softly. What do you need right now? To think or to calm down? Anything that you think might help you. That was a lot to handle. I know you regard All Might highly. I can't even begin to imagine what this did to that respect. Anything you need, kid. Izuku swallows, squeezing his eyes shut when overwhelmed tears threaten to fall. I'd really just like to go out for a while if we can. Get off campus for a bit, you know? Get away from everything. But we don't have to. Okay, Sensei agrees without hesitation. Have anywhere in mind? Actually, Izuku bites his lip, looking back down at his shoes. Yes, I do. All right then. Sensei nods, throwing an arm gently over Izuku's shoulders and helping keep him balanced. We should probably talk anyways, and I doubt you'd want to do that here. There's some stuff we need to discuss before anything else. Right. Izuku nods shyly. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 8 of When Realities Collide. Chapter 9 will be up next. Eager to hear your thoughts and reactions to this one. And as always, thank you so much for listening.